All right, so we are live. Just gonna wait for people to join us, and then I want to maybe give people some time to join, and then we'll get started very soon. So just waiting for people to be able to connect. So right now we have some people watching us, so that's great. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. It is 8 o'clock in the morning in Canada. If you could let us know in the comments maybe where you're watching from or your name. We will be answering questions at the end. Just want to give people more time to join, but it is 8 in the morning in Canada. Maybe you can let us know what country you're watching from. Just waiting. All right, so I'll give it a couple of minutes, maybe one or two, and then we'll get started. So we do have some people here. Awesome. All right. So it is 8:01. I want to give it a minute or so, Darren, and then we'll get started, okay? People are still, we have more people joining. Sorry, I could just see the numbers here, that's why. If you want to leave us in the comments where you're watching from, that would be great, just so we get some interaction here. We can know where you're watching, whether you're a nurse or not, in the country of origin that you're currently in, what time it is right now in your country. That would be great. We are still waiting for some people to join, so I'm seeing that more and more people are joining. So I just want to give it some time before we get started. And it's currently 8 in the morning in Canada. So we're hoping to get more people to join us. Not very talkative people today. All right. So we have more people. I'm going to give it maybe a minute or so, and then we will get started. All right, I'm going to get started. So first and foremost, thank you everyone that's here, that's joining us. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. This will be saved later on YouTube, and you'll also be receiving a newsletter through your email. If you, for whatever reason, have to go, you'll be able to see the end piece of it. We're going to be answering questions at the end, so I do suggest that you stay until the end, because it'll give you an opportunity to ask any you may have, and then that way we can answer them for everyone to see, but it will be saved on our YouTube channel. So with me is Darren. So Darren, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
Good morning, or good afternoon or good evening for wherever you are residing. My name is Darren McAuliffe. I have been in healthcare in Ontario, Canada for well over 32 years. Particularly, I've been into the long-term care sector, which is in Canada is also known as nursing homes. I have since sold our long-term care home, and I have been working as a consultant and a leadership coach for healthcare professionals. And I have partnered up with Sandra because one of the things that I've noticed when I was an owner-operator of a home was the difficulties of having individuals come from other countries trying to come into Canada to work in our healthcare field. And particularly, I noticed that a lot of people were not fully prepared as to what Ontario offers, what our healthcare system's like, what our schooling system's like. So providing coaching opportunities while you're still in your homeland to ask questions, because I know it's an anxious times for everybody to be coming across, moving, perhaps even trying to bring their family over, can be obviously very anxiety driven. So my goal is to help reduce all that and to educate individuals so that when you do come to Canada, you are as prepared as can be. So Sandra and I, our goal is to try to minimize the discomfort level that you may be experiencing, and to help guide each and every one of you who decides to come through this route, the opportunity to be fully successful. So I look forward to perhaps working with you if you so desire in the future.
Thank you, Darren. So my name is Sandra Velosa. I'm an immigration consultant here in Canada. And like Darren said, we've partnered up specifically to assist those that are trying to migrate to Canada to work here as caregivers in the healthcare system. Velosa Immigration is a completely virtual company. We started in COVID, so there wasn't really a need for a physical space, and it's kind of worked out for us, which is great because it allows us to work from people all over the world. We offer services specifically geared towards immigration. So anybody that's either interested in coming here on a temporary basis, like is a work visa, tourist visa, or study visa, or those that are interested in settling in Canada permanently, whether it be through a sponsorship application or express entry, be more than glad to assist you. And we'll leave our contact information at the end. Nonetheless, if there are any questions during the presentation, you can go ahead and leave them in the comments, and then we'll be answering them shortly after. So we're going to talk about a couple of things. I think it's important for people to understand, if you want to work in Canada or you want to settle in Canada, really what it all entails. And I think the good thing about pairing or connecting with someone like Darren is that he has insight in the industry. He's actually obviously hired people in the industry. So it's very important that then if you have questions in regards to, well, this is where I want to be in the future, that you ask them, because he would be the right person. I'm going to focus more so on the immigration piece of it, essentially how or what you will need to do in order for you to get here. But once you are here, for you to be successful and perhaps transition from being a caregiver to a nurse, if you so desire. So healthcare has been a huge topic, specifically in immigration, because there is a high demand in the industry. And I think Darren can speak firsthand in how necessary it is to have the right personnel when you're trying to run a long-term care home. So our population is aging, and therefore there is a need right now for qualified caregivers. Now, the industry itself offers competitive salaries. We're talking about anywhere from 15 to 25, and this really depends in the province also on your certifications, education, how long you've been working in the industry, as well as the responsibilities. But it really gives people the opportunity to settle into a position or a career that has long-term longevity. And I think that's what a lot of our clients are looking for: stable employment, stable income, and obviously do something that you're able to give back to the community as well. So one of the answers that I mostly get when I'm talking to people in the industry, why do you do this? It's a passion, it's a desire. I like to help people. I like to give back to people. And I think that if that's your personality, this is the right fit for you. But most importantly, when people come to Canada, they want to settle here. It's a great country, has a lot of opportunities, not only for yourself, but for your children, for your family. And if you're looking to really settle into a country that is going to offer you all of these opportunities, you're looking, how can I become a permanent resident in the way, right? Because if you're coming here through a work visa, you want to make sure that you can then apply for permanent residence. So right now, Canada has opened up various streams to do so. The caregiver stream, which is a federal stream, and it applies for all provinces, currently is closed, but they may make announcements early in the year to open up the stream. So just cross our fingers and see what the government will say. Nonetheless, those that are interested in working in Ontario specifically, and that's where Darren and I are located, Ontario has a provincial nominee program that allows people with a job offer, after working 9 months consecutively as a home support worker, the opportunity to apply for permanent residence. There are other eligibility criteria that the applicant and the employer must meet. And I'm not really going to jump into a lot of details because it does entail a lot of information, but it gives you an an idea on how you can transition from temporary residence to permanent residence once you're in Canada. And I think that's what people are looking for. All right, so let's talk about the job market, because I think this is very important, right? People want to know, well, what are my job opportunities once I get there and work as a caregiver? So there is a projected growth, as we mentioned. We're looking at or forecasting a 20% growth by 2030. And the more our population ages, the more caregivers we're going to need, right? So whether you're looking to study here in Canada or work in Canada, I think anything in the healthcare system, specifically nurses, PSW, home support workers, is something that is going to give you the opportunity to excel in a career, and there's high demand for it. Can you speak more on that, Darren, while you were in healthcare, kind of how you perceived it firsthand? Because one thing is to look at statistics and numbers, but I think it's important for people to see exactly what it felt like running a home and not having the necessary staff.
Yeah, 100%. And thanks, Sandra, for that opportunity, because the one thing I wanted to also mention, so for those that are watching and listening right now, when you see the word, you see the number 20%, do you think 20% of what? I can tell you that a news release came out 1 or 2 months ago that stated that we were going to need in the province of Ontario alone. So we're not even talking about Canada, the province of Ontario alone. We're going to need about 55,000 personal support workers. So these are individuals that are in that range that we're talking about for salary. We're not talking about registered nurses. We're talking about personal support workers alone, 55,000 and growing, just to meet the needs of what we need in the province of Ontario. As an owner operator, the most frustrating thing was not having the staff on hand. I am a huge proponent of providing the best of care to the residents that I service, and not having enough staff was heartbreaking. Which is why the first time in my 30 years, I at that time went outside, not only outside the province of Ontario to hire, but outside of Canada to hire, so that I could bring qualified foreign workers like yourselves to come in and become part of our workforce, part of our community, and to give the care that our seniors at this time deserved. So for me, it was a win-win. It was an opportunity to help my residents, my staff, and our healthcare system, help them with that. But it was also a win for the foreign workers who wanted a different change of life, wanted to come to Canada and start building their roots and settling their roots and their foundation here. So it was a great combination. But to Sandra's point, we really struggled and we continue to struggle because we are in a deficit to bring healthcare workers in, and not just healthcare workers, but we also want good qualified healthcare workers, and to be able to provide the care that we want to do.
Thank you, Darren. I think that's important, just because a lot of times we hear in the news and the media, social media, etc. There's a need in Canada for caregivers, healthcare workers, nurses, etc. But the reality is getting that information firsthand from someone who's actually experienced it, I think really puts more of an emphasis on the actual need. And it's important for people that are watching us to understand that. So there are regional demands. Obviously, there are provinces that may require more healthcare workers than others. Ontario and BC being one of the most populated provinces, it's no-brainer that they're going to have more job opportunities per se, but that's not to say that there aren't opportunities in provinces such as Alberta. Nova Scotia as well has provincial nominee programs specifically focusing on physicians as well as healthcare workers. So all in all, it's a need not only in certain provinces, but I think nationwide. So if you're looking for job opportunities, it's something that you're going to see in demand overall all throughout Canada. Now, there is job security and benefits, and that's the beauty about it. Once we get into a career, we get into a profession, we want to make sure that there's stable employment, because that's going to allow us the opportunity to buy a home and do investments and really settle in the country that we're migrating to. So stable employment is something that you're going to find because there's a need for it, and there are employment opportunities for you, and there are incentives such as pension, healthcare plans, and potential support for permanent residents. Granted, you have to also put your part in making sure that you meet the requirements that the employer is requesting from you, right? So it is a win-win situation once you find or land a good position, but are also able to showcase your skills and qualifications for the role, allowing the employer to support permanent residence or support stable employment. And there's an integration support, right? So one of the things that Darren offers is that coaching support. So for all of you that are watching us in the future, if you were to find employment and you needed that coaching support, that's something that he can offer, which will allow you to be better prepared once you come to Canada. One thing is what you envision or what you think things will be, and another thing is reality, right? So getting coaching support from somebody that's hired and worked in the field and really understands the ins and outs of it is essential. I don't know if you want to kind of dive into some of the coaching that you offer, Darren, just so people understand how it all ties in together.
Sure. So first and foremost, I have put a program together specifically for um, individuals like yourselves trying to, make a better life, or trying to get, or whoever wants to be adventurous and try to live in a different country. So I go through a program of different things, like I mentioned before, like what our healthcare systems like, education, our labor laws, our culture, which is extremely important. Canada has, we've always been referred to as a melting pot. We have multiple foreign individuals come together and become Canadian, and our ethnicities are across the board. And we welcome people with open arms. But again, there's also that learning curve of what to expect when you move to Canada, what our taxes are like, and all those things. So there's that element to it, but there's also the element of you know um, how to do well in an interview, how to prepare yourself, how to questions about the healthcare system in general, issues with transitioning. So these are the things that I've supported with. Typically on my regular coaching things that I do on services, sorry, that I do is it's a more of a leadership individual. So once you're here, and you're trying to get into a leadership role, those are the types of coaching opportunities that I also provide. Right now, my focus is how to help support you and individuals like yourselves transitioning to Canada, and to make sure that you are knowledgeable and comfortable and set up for success. Because if you're successful, then the transition and the employer is going to be successful.
Awesome, Darren. Thank you. All right, so I've been getting some questions about, okay, well, I want to work there. How do I start, right? So the process typically starts with an employer. So there has to be a company that wants to offer you a job offer, and that job offer has to be supported by an LMIA. Now, it's an acronym for Labor Market Impact Assessment, and essentially what the Labor Market Impact Assessment does is it secures jobs for Canadian citizens and permanent residents. So this should be something that is seen as a last resort from employers, as opposed to something that is done as the first thing that an employer does. And what I mean by that is the government wants to make sure that the jobs are first offered to Canadians prior to going overseas to look for somebody. But sometimes there isn't a Canadian that is willing or wanting to do this job, and therefore employers must seek employees from outside. So labor market impact assessment is really assessing the impact that the hiring of the foreign worker will have on our labor market, whether it's going to be positive or negative. If it's going to be positive, that means they're going to allow the employer to hire the temporary foreign worker. And by having a positive LMIA, then the temporary foreign worker can go ahead and proceed and apply for a work permit, right? So ideally, Darren and I have been talking and speaking to some employers, and hopefully in the future we will have some connections that can lead to employment opportunities for those interested. As of now, anybody that wants to apply to come here to Canada to work, in almost all cases, you're going to need an employer that offers a job offer, and that job offer is supported by an LMIA. And I'm really putting an emphasis on this because people assume that they can just apply for a work permit simply because they want to work in Canada, but there's a whole process behind it, and there has to be an employment offer attached to it. I highly, highly encourage you to be very careful in paying for job offers, or perhaps putting yourselves in situations where you're getting misled, because there are people that abuse sometimes the system and want to charge you crazy amounts, and this is not legal. So just make sure that you're very careful, because we've seen it all in terms of people wanting to come here and really being desperate, and people really preying on that and making people pay and do things that they're not supposed to. So that is essentially the application process. It starts with the employer. The employer will apply for an LMIA. They have to meet certain eligibility criteria to do so. Once the LMIA is granted, they will then give this LMIA code to the worker, which will then the worker, the future employee, will apply for an LMIA based work permit. This is going to be what's called a closed work permit. So essentially, you can only work for that company in that occupation. Any changes to the employment must be verified with ESDC, or the employer will have to apply for a new LMIA. Now, keep in mind that during this time that you're obtaining Canadian work experience, you may be eligible for permanent residence after, right? So once you've worked in Canada, you may be eligible for permanent residence, whether it be through provincial nominee program or a federal program. So that's the application process in a whole, but it does take some time, because as Darren's been through the process, LMIAs can take anywhere from 3 months or so, and then your work permit will also take roughly 3 months or so. So we're looking at a 6-month time. Things right now may be taking a little longer. So if an employer can avoid the LMIA process altogether, it's a benefit not only to them, but to you in terms of processing time and for you to get here and start working as fast as possible. With that being said, it's important that when you're applying for your work permit that you can showcase that you can do the job. So it's not just, okay, I have a job offer, I'm going to go there and work as a caregiver. When you're applying for your work permit, the government wants you to show that you have job references that show that you have experience in this job, that you're able to show that you can speak the language that's required for the position, and the level of English really depends on the position, whether or not this is a requirement from the employer. You're going to need obviously certain qualifications or education to get into the position. So some positions are going to need a high school diploma, others are going to need post-secondary. So whatever the case may be, you have to have relevant qualifications, skills, references, etc., in order for your work permit to be approved, right? So the best example is you can't have a job offer as a graphic designer, but your whole life you've been working in construction. It's really not going to make sense to the immigration officer, and more than likely that work permit will be refused. Now, there is a push right now for the government to incentivize Francophone migration all over Canada, with the exception of Quebec. So we know that Quebec is fully French speaking, and we have the province of New Brunswick that's the only province that's officially bilingual. But in every other province, there are pockets of people that speak French, but not as the government would desire. So the only way to motivate people to learn French, speak French, is, well, you know what, we're going to make things easier for you guys. So the French mobility program, essentially what it's done, it's allowed people that can show that they have a level 5 of English the ability to apply for a work permit as long as they have a job offer without the need of an LMIA. And this is a beauty because, as I mentioned, an LMIA for an employer costs them $1,000 per person, but also there's a lot of paperwork that goes through it. The processing time is quite extensive. When you're doing it through an LMI exempt program like the Francophone Mobility Program, well, then all that is required is the job offer, but it costs the employer, as opposed to $1,000, only $230 to validate that job offer. And it applies to any position as long as the position is outside of Quebec, right? So you need to show that the job offer is outside of Quebec and that you have a proficiency level in French of 5. Now, I may be scaring some of you guys because you're like, okay, I speak English and I speak English perfectly, but my French is non-existent, or I don't speak French at all. Well, one of the beauties of this program is that there are people that can take a 9-month course, or if you can showcase that you've taken a course that has led you to a level 5, we can use that as demonstration that you meet the language benchmark. Okay, so we do have some courses that we're currently offering right now for people that want to meet that French opportunity. So that French benchmark. So as long as you take this course, once you've completed the course, you can utilize this as the eligibility criteria, obviously, as long as you have a job offer as well, to apply through the French Mobility Program. Are there any questions in regards to that? If so, let me know in the comments below. If not, I can dive in later in further detail. But essentially, what we want to do is make sure that people can apply without the need of an LMI, making it easier for both parties because it's faster and cheaper.
Now, Sandra, also one more point there, and I think it's good for everybody to know is that just because you may meet the French requirement does not mean that you need to speak fluent French while you're at work. It's just a criteria that they want to see. So you could very well meet the criteria and never even speak French while in the workplace. So just so you know that, in terms of everybody's nervous to say, I might know a little bit of French, but I won't be able to have a long conversation with somebody in French. That may not even be necessary.
Yes, that's correct. So I think it's just a bypass really the eligibility criteria for you to apply for a work permit that's going to be processed faster. But once you get to Canada, the employer, if you're located in Ontario, the employer really wants you to be proficient in the English language, which most people here are. I think it's just to bypass the eligibility criteria for the work permit. So that's an important point, and we can talk about it further later. But just to give you guys an example, some of our clients right now, what they're doing is in order to be exempt from the LMIA and they have a job offer, in whatever tier knock it is, really. So it could be a cleaning position, graphic designer, whatever the case may be. They're taking French courses to prove that they have that level 5 without actually having to take a certified test. And once they've passed that course, then we're presenting that as proof of French proficiency along with the job offer, and they're applying for the work permit. So it's really making things easier, and it's just a demonstration that the government wants to make this as flexible as possible to motivate people to become bilingual. And as everything, once people start jumping ship, then things will get harder. So the faster you get in, the better. So I wanted Darren to talk about some of the general pathways to work in the Canadian healthcare system. So once the person is here and they want to transition to nursing, can you talk a little bit about what they would have to do?
Yeah. So traditionally, you need to come here first, and then I'm seeing some of the comments. And it's great to see where everybody is located from all over the world. Those that are registered staff, okay, you can. When you come here to Canada, you won't be able to just jump into a registered role. I know probably about the dozen or so individuals that I brought in from different parts of the world. Most of them have stayed into the personal support worker role just because of that's what they wanted to do. Some of them have transitioned back into the registered role, and really the information is right here in front of you on the screen. They need number one is you need your credential assessment of what it is. So before you work here in Canada, your education credentials must be assessed to ensure that you meet the Canadian standards. Now there are countries, and I think some of you are from those countries, that the equivalency of what you have in your homeland to what we have offered here in Ontario, Canada, are similar. I'm not going to say exactly the same, but they're similar. So that's going to help keep the transition a little smoother for you. And you need to be, you need to go through the English requirements. Obviously, as Sandra has pointed out, is very, very important. You have to be able to hit. Sorry, Sandra, was it a 6 in your English proficiency?
Yes, so they have to get I would say 6 or 7, I would argue,
Okay,
because it's typically intermediate high. And you know what? Even just not just for the test, Darren, but you and I both know as a whole, it's just going to make your life easier if you're able to communicate. I mean, you're dealing in
for
the
sure.
healthcare system. A lot of people may have dementia or are dealing with physical disabilities, and you don't
Hearing
have the
loss.
time to explain yourself. You really want someone to understand you when you're speaking.
For sure, for sure. So provincial licensing is probably one of the main ones here, and that is after credentialing assessment, foreign healthcare professionals must apply for licensing to a relevant provincial regulatory body. So, for example, in nurses, we have the College of Nurses of Ontario. So you would apply to the College of Nurses of Ontario. They would assess where you are in terms of your experience and your education. There could very well be you just go ahead and either write the exam to test your ability, or there might be some opportunity to upgrade in some courses, and then you'll be able to write the exam. Physicians must pass a medical council of Canada evaluating the examination, which is the MCCEE, to apply for a license in the province that they wish to work. And then you're going to have the work permit option. So once you get into that, then you're going to have the temporary foreign work program, allows employers to hire foreign workers for temporary positions. Now, in what I've experienced is individuals come and they're in the personal support workers. So if you're an RN or registered in a foreign country, you come into Canada, there's a great chance that you're going to be able to be accepted as a personal support worker first, get yourself, as we say, in the door. You're working for the organization, and now you have the opportunity to apply to the College of Nurses, let's say in Ontario, to go through those assessment periods and to hopefully get yourself back into the registered nurse position, which obviously means more responsibility, but also your pay in Canada. Typically for an RN, you're probably going to be somewhere between the low 40s to probably close to $50.
These are some additional steps to successfully transition. So this is something that you focus on, Darren, wholly, which is networking and mentorship, as well as continued education and cultural competence training. I know you touched on it at the beginning. I don't know if you want to expand maybe so on culturally some differences that you've seen and how some cultural practices differ in some countries as in Canada, as well as some of the education piece that you offer, as well as the networking and mentorship.
Sure. So culturally, I mean, and I respect, different cultures all over the world. The one experience I can tell you firsthand is, for example, I had a lady from India who was in a position of power. She was an RN, and found out that she had some issues that she should have brought up, but because the physician was a male, she did not feel comfortable bringing it to their attention, because it was in her culture that you don't speak negatively or derogatory towards a male. Um, in Canada, you have freedom of speech. You speak what you want to say. You say what you want to say without any repercussions. And it took a while for her to understand that, but she understood that, look, you have a license now. You need to be able to make sure that you're doing the best of your abilities of your job. And whether or not there's doesn't matter if you're male, female, if you have an issue, you bring it up. So I noticed right away that there was a cultural gap. And in Canada, you have those opportunities to speak up. There, we welcome everybody. It doesn't matter if you're male, female, transgender. It doesn't matter. It's one of those things where, there's something in Canada called human rights, and we respect that. And it takes some time for people in other countries to see that and acknowledge that. So that's a big part of the whole cultural piece that we want everybody to understand and to accept as well, because it does provide a bit of a change for what you may be used to.
Awesome. So I've been getting some questions, and okay, so how do we get started? So the whole purpose of this presentation was really to give you guys an overview of the healthcare system, the need for healthcare workers in Canada, the possibility to transition from temporary residence to PR once you have been working in Canada. As I mentioned in the beginning, during the presentation, Darren and I are working with some employers that may be interested in hiring temporary foreign workers. So we want to really keep your information in our database. If and when positions do arise, that we can contact you. How can you prepare yourselves? The first thing that you're going to need is to make sure that you're able to show. Now, I want to put a high emphasis on show, because I'm getting a lot of people asking me, hey, do I need to know French? You don't need to know French, but we need to show that you have met a level 5. So there are certain courses that you can take that will showcase that you have a level 5, and you'll get information about this in your email, so you can take a look at it and then see if it's something feasible for you, not only in terms of time, but also finances. It's something that you can afford. But if you have that level 5, or you can showcase that you have finished a course granting you a level 5, then you'll be ready to apply for French mobility if an opportunity arises where you have a job offer, because then you would be eligible through the Francophone mobility, right? Another thing is speaking to your employers. So if you're a nurse, you're going to need references. A lot of the times, once we do have clients that have a job offer, it's been a hassle to get references. You're going to need job references that can speak on your experience, right? What you did, your job duties, whether you were paid for this position or not, how long you worked there. You're going to also need proof of your qualifications, whether you're a nurse, if you've taken additional courses, etc. All of that. For those that speak English, having an IELTS exam or a CELPIP exam is also important, because it's going to showcase your English proficiency. And having your resume ready is very important. As I mentioned in the beginning, Darren offers coaching in terms of how to prepare yourself for an interview, how to prepare your resume, things of that nature are important. So if you ever do have an opportunity where you're going to be interviewed by a Canadian employer, it's very important that you prepare yourself appropriately. And I know that there's YouTube's videos and things of that nature, but getting that one-to-one coaching and that one-to-one experience is key, especially from someone that did hiring in the past, so really understands what employers are looking for. So I think that is very important. Understanding the system as a whole and really being adamant in submitting job offers. If you were to get a job offer, you had an employer that was interested in you in terms of immigration services, we can definitely assist you, whether it be with the work permit or speak to the employer to kind of walk them through the process and make them understand what it would require from them in order to hire you. And we could assist you in that way. So I would suggest that everybody that's here, keep an eye on your email. You're going to be getting newsletters in terms of the French courses and kind of next steps for yourself. Hopefully for the new year, if you do have an opportunity, that you're able to kind of jump on that. Do you want to add something, Darren?
Yeah, I just actually received a message from somebody here online asking, just confirming that if we were Velosa Immigration. In asking about the charges of immigration of an RN, anybody that has specific immigration questions, I would urge you to contact Sandra. Sandra is the professional when it comes to the ins and outs of the whole immigration process. I'm here to support Sandra, and I'm also here to obviously to support you. Any questions with regards to coaching, in regards to learning the processes and all those ins and outs, as well as maybe any healthcare questions, please feel free to contact me. But not to push this person off to individuals. Sandra, they're looking for your contact. The contact is right here in
Yes,
front of you on the screen.
I left her contact information, both, phone number, Instagram, as well as email. So you can definitely contact us, follow us on Instagram, follow us on YouTube. We're constantly posting information in terms of immigration services. Darren also shares a lot of information in his LinkedIn through coaching and things of that nature. So really getting yourself involved is important. I have a really good question here. So when we apply for a care assistant job, does our nursing work experience help, or we have to bring work experience as a care assistant? What do you think, Darren?
Absolutely. Again, anything that can help beef up your resume to show what you have. So, when as an employer, when I look as an employer and I'm looking at somebody that just graduated from school, that has healthcare experience, or somebody that has 5 or 10 years of healthcare experience, showing that they have what we consider to have bedside manners. Typically an employer is going to lean more towards somebody with experience. Not to say, just so everybody understands, not to say that if you are a recent graduate that we're not going to look at you. I'm just saying that it certainly helps that when you have that work experience, specifically in whatever field that you are going towards, that you put that down. It definitely makes a difference.
Perfect. And then the last question I think was, and I think this is what most people are asking, how can I get a job for caregiver? Going online specifically to the jobbank.gc.ca, even if you're applying through Indeed or Indeed, Monster, Job Bank, all of these platforms give you the opportunity and possibility of submitting your resume. Where we could assist you is either through the immigration piece or the coaching. So if you get a job offer, you want to apply for a work permit and really don't understand how to do so, we can most definitely help you with your application from beginning to end, and also vetting whether or not the job offer is valid. I've had a lot of people that have come to me and said, hey, I have a job offer. And when I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, it's not really a valid job offer. They want you to pay for this. So you have to be careful on that. And then obviously, once you do have your work permit approved and you're now ready to come to Canada, I think getting coaching prior to understand how to perform better and do better when you're here is going to make such a difference in your experience and how you are perceived by your employer when you come here. So I think that's important. I have another question here. It says, I had my qualifications as test through West. This. Okay, so all your ECA does, which is your education credential assessment, all it really does, it's giving Canada, or it's giving your equivalency of your certification in Canada, right? So if you have a bachelor's, it's equivalent to a bachelor in Canadian standards. If you have a master's, so it's really showcasing your equivalency, and it will be necessary once you're going through the process of getting certified here as a nurse, or if you're going through an immigration process, you may require an ECA, which is an education credential assessment, to prove that you meet the eligibility criteria in terms of education. And this is something that an employer may consider, but to apply for a work permit, it's not something that's required right off the bat. I would urge people to not get an ECA unless you need to, because it isn't a financial investment. It may not be necessary right off the bat, and it does expire. So you want to make sure that when you do get it, that it's closest to the application date, so it's still valid.
Sandra, sorry to interrupt. The person who's corresponding with me right now said
Mhm.
that the chat is disabled online, and he or she's wondering whether or not we can get this resolved so they can comment. Now,
There is
I see comments on the one
comments.
side.
She might the private chat might be disabled, but if she leaves a comment, I'm still getting comments here. Um, yeah, like I'm still getting comments. I don't know. Can you connect someone who's currently doing an AIP with an employer for a job offer to proceed with immigration? If you're referring to the Atlantic Immigration Program, for those that don't know, the Atlantic, it makes up 4 provinces: New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland and Labrador. Each one of these provinces has a list of designated employers. This is public information you would be able to access. Simply put on the Google search bar designated employers in New Brunswick. You're going to get a list of all the designated employers. You can start your job search there. Really start looking at those employers, send them your send them your resume. If they were to provide you with a job offer, those employers are LMI exempt. So technically you just need the job offer itself, and you would just then proceed to apply for your work permit. If you're already in Canada, then you could do so as well. And then you would be applying for a permanent residence shortly after, once you've met the work experience, which is equivalent to a year, approximately 1,500 hours. So yeah, I think that's it.
Sorry, Sandra. This individual has asked, and some people may want to know this as well.
Okay.
How many how much will it cost, and how many bands are required for moving to Canada as an RN or a caregiver? Do employees sponsored, or do I need to come on my own?
Okay, so how much would it cost? I think anywhere from maybe $5,000 to $7,000, and I'll tell you why. Not all employers are going to pay for your expenses, and make some, depending on the work permit, whether it's LMI exempt or not, are not required to do so, right? So you're going to have to maybe assume expenses in terms of flights, in terms of accreditation, if you need to translate any documents, right? There are government fees associated to applications. So work permits have a government fee of $100, and you have to take biometrics. If the biometrics are in another city, not close to where you're at, you're going to have to assume those costs of traveling back and forth, right? So these are all things that you have to consider. Once you're in Canada, you may have to look for housing, transportation. I mean, you're not going to get paid right off the bat, right? There's going to be a time frame from when you get here until when you receive your first paycheck. So you have to have the finances to kind of cover those expenses until you start receiving payments. I see it almost as an investment. So it is a process that will require some time investment and financial investment from your end, but you're going to be obviously compensated because you're going to be working in Canada afterwards. But that's probably what you're looking at. I mean, you're also going to have to probably do exams, which, I mean, if you take the IELTS exam, you're looking at $200-300 US. So the employer is not going to pay for everything, right? I mean, they will pay for what they need to pay for legally, but everything else the employee is expected to cover.
And just to add to that, so everybody's aware, that's Canadian funds. It's not American funds, because I know a lot of times people think,
Yes,
you know, it's in American dollars. These are Canadian dollars, which is it's better than saying 7,000 American, because that would be
especially now.
that would be over 10,000, close to 11,000 Canadian. So it is in Canadian funds.
Okay, and this program does not exclude English-speaking countries. So the French Mobility Program includes everybody. There are people, for example, maybe in Morocco, that are completely bilingual, trilingual, right? Like even in Canada, a lot of people are trilingual. They speak English, French, and another language. So it's not excluding anyone. It's simply promoting French, and those that can show that they have a level 5. Again, like Darren mentioned, you don't have to be fluent. Like you don't have to be the best French speaker. If you are able to show that you've taken a course and met a CLB5, which is a Canadian language benchmark, that's all we need to go ahead and apply. So my best advice to you would be to start looking at French as an avenue to enter Canada in a more flexible way. And what that entails is perhaps taking a course that can showcase that you have that CLB5 that's required as the minimum criteria to be considered through this program. Do you have any other questions? Because I think everything else has pretty much been answered. Do you have the person asking any more questions, or we're all set?
This individual, I think, will be contacting you. They want to get to Canada as soon as possible, perhaps within 3 months. But if you're listening right now, the process is gonna take longer than 3 months. I think Sandra alluded to the fact that, you know, it is a government-run program. You know, there are different hurdles, different things that you need to go through. But with Sandra guiding you through this, she'll make sure that it is done, you know, done correctly the first time. I have been through the processes before, dealing with somebody prior to Sandra, where, you know, the ball was dropped numerous times, and it was frustrating as an employer. I can't even imagine how frustrating it would be as an applicant. But Sandra will make sure that that you go through the process as seamless as possible.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone for your time, for obviously joining us. It's really early in the morning for us, but it might be late for you guys. So thank you again for everybody that joined, all of your questions. I know that there may be still questions. So again, we're going to be sending a newsletter with our information, myself and Darren, so you can go ahead and get in touch with us. I will actually put the slide with our contact information once again, so you guys are able to see that, and I don't know why it's not showing up. Well,
And while Sandra's doing that, I want to thank you all for joining. And although I can't see who's all on, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to read the different comments from where you're from. I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. I know this is it's an exciting, but it could be obviously an anxiety-driven field, because it's a big step for everybody. But just know that, if it is something that you want to continue to go through, Sandra and myself would be more than happy to assist you in reaching your goals. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, it's not allowing me to share, but we will send that. We will send that in an email. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. You guys have a good day. Thank you for joining us. Bye.